All right, let's dive into something pretty amazing today. We're heading to Easter Island.
Easter Island.
Home to those giant stone figures.
The Moai.
Yeah, the Moai, the ones that just kind of stare right through you. We're going to try and crack the code on these monolithic marvels, figure out how a Stone Age civilization, miles from anywhere, managed to pull this off.
It's a question that has baffled people, honestly, for centuries.
It really is.
How were they carved? How on earth were they moved? These massive statues across miles of rugged terrain.
Exactly. I mean, just starting with the basics, where do they get the materials for these things? Did Easter Island just have a hidden stash of super strong stone?
Not exactly a hidden stash.
Okay.
But they were resourceful. The Moai were primarily carved from volcanic tuff, a type of rock formed from compressed volcanic ash. Luckily for them, Easter Island had a readily available source, and a volcanic quarry called Rano Raraku.
So volcanic rock explains the island's kind of dramatic landscape. But tuff is pretty soft, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do they shape these intricate figures with, stone tools?
You're right, tuff is relatively soft, especially when compared to, well, other types of stone. And yes, they used stone tools, called toki, essentially stone chisels, often made from a harder volcanic rock, called Hawaii. Imagine the skill and patience it took to carve these massive figures using nothing but stone on stone.
It's mind-boggling. Okay, so we've got the carving part, sort of. But then the real head-scratcher. How did they move these Moai, some weighing over 50 tons, across miles of uneven terrain? I mean, it's not like they had pickup trucks back then.
No pickup trucks.
No.
And that's where the theories get really interesting. One of the most popular involves logs, lots and lots of logs, used as rollers to transport the statues on wooden platforms.
Oh, like those ancient Egyptians using logs to move massive stones for the pyramids.
Precisely. But even with logs, the logistics are mind-blowing. I mean, can you imagine the manpower it would take to cut down trees, shape them into rollers, and then coordinate the movement of a multi-ton statue across miles of uneven terrain?
And talk about a high-stakes operation. I mean, one wrong move and splat.
Yeah.
Giant stone pancake.
Yeah, right. So that's one theory. Another theory, and this one really captures the imagination, suggests that the Moai were walked to their locations.
Wait, walked on tiny little stone legs?
Not quite. The theory proposes that the Rapa Nui people used ropes to rock the statues back and forth, creating a walking motion across the island. Think of it like a controlled wobble, carefully shifting the weight to inch the statue forward.
Okay, now I'm picturing one of those inflatable tube men you see at car dealerships, but, made of stone. And a lot older.
A surprisingly apt comparison, and there's actually some evidence to support this theory. Archaeologists have found Moai with flattened bases, possibly from this rocking motion, and some oral traditions from the island, they describe the statues walking to their final locations.
That's pretty incredible. So we got logs, walking statues. It's amazing how two completely different approaches could potentially solve the same problem. But which one is more likely? Do they use one method, a combination?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, there's still no definitive answer. Both theories have their proponents. The evidence we have can be interpreted in multiple ways. Even the top researchers in the field haven't reached a consensus.
So the mystery continues. It's fascinating how these statues, silent for centuries, continue to spark debate and inspire such a range of theories. It really speaks to the power of human curiosity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and that's what makes studying the Moai so compelling. We're constantly piecing together clues, analyzing evidence, trying to understand the minds of the people who created these remarkable figures.
Like a giant puzzle. And each new discovery, each new piece of evidence, it brings us closer to understanding the story of the Rapa Nui people and their incredible achievements. So we've covered how they were carved, the theories behind how they were moved, but the question remains why? What inspired the Rapa Nui people to dedicate so much time and effort to creating these, imposing figures?
Well, it's clear that the Moai weren't just random sculptures scattered around the island. They were deeply connected to the Rapa Nui people's understanding of their ancestry and their place in the world.
So not just giant statues, they held a deeper meaning, a connection to something beyond the physical world.
Exactly. The Moai were representations of ancestors, embodying their spirits and acting as guardians for their descendants.
So like giant stone family portraits, but, with a spiritual dimension.
That's a great way to put it. And just like families, there was a bit of, well, friendly competition between different clans on the island.
I can see where this is going.
Okay.
The bigger your statue, the more impressive your ancestors, the more bragging rights.
You got it. Size was definitely a status symbol when it came to Moai. Larger statues indicated a tribe's wealth, power, and ability to honor their ancestors in a truly grand way.
I'm picturing, like, some ancient Rapa Nui chieftain boasting, "Yeah, that's my great-great-grandfather. He was 30 feet tall and made of solid rock."
It wouldn't surprise me. Remember, resources were limited on the island. The ability to carve and move such massive statues, it was a testament to a clan's resources, organization, and devotion to their ancestors.
It's incredible to think that these statues, silent for centuries, can tell us so much about the social dynamics, the beliefs, the ambitions of the people who created them. It's a reminder that even cultures separated by time and distance, they share common threads. The desire to honor their ancestors, to leave a lasting legacy, to express their beliefs through art and creation. But it's clear we've only just scratched the surface of the Moai mystery. There's still so much more to uncover, so much more to explore.
Absolutely. The Moai are like a window into a lost world, and with each new discovery, each new piece of evidence, we gain a deeper understanding of the Rapa Nui people and their incredible achievements.
So stay tuned. We continue our deep dive into the world of the Moai. We'll be unraveling more mysteries, exploring their unique features, and uncovering the story they tell about a culture that, well, continues to captivate our imaginations.
We've got a lot more ground to cover, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Moai statues of Easter Island. Before we move on, I think it's worth addressing a common misconception about these figures. Many people picture the Moai as just, well, giant heads.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely accurate.
I gotta admit, I always pictured them as just heads too. Like someone went through a lot of trouble just to make, giant stone faces.
It's understandable given some of the famous photos of
Yeah.
the Moai partially buried in the Rano Araku quarry. Those images kind of cemented the Easter Island heads nickname.
Right.
But in reality, the Moai have full bodies.
Wait, seriously? So those photos, they were just showing, like, the top half?
Exactly. Over time, erosion, shifting sands, they became partially submerged. But excavations have revealed that they are indeed full-bodied figures, often with intricate carvings and details extending well beyond those iconic faces.
Okay, so those photos were a bit misleading. But that makes me even more curious about the effort involved. If they have bodies, does that mean they were carved in different positions? Were they doing things, holding tools, or maybe even striking a pose?
While they weren't exactly striking dynamic poses, they weren't just, standing there either. The Moai were often depicted kneeling or standing with their hands resting on their stomachs.
Interesting. So there was a specific posture, a kind of standardized look for these statues.
Yes. And that posture, along with details like the elongated earlobes, the prominent brows, it reflects the stylistic conventions of Rapa Nui art. But within those conventions, there was also room for individualization.
Ah, so each Moai had its own unique personality, its own set of features that made it stand out.
Precisely. They weren't just generic representations of ancestors. They were intended to capture the likeness, the specific characteristics of the individual they were meant to honor.
That's amazing. It's like they were trying to capture not just the physical appearance, but like the essence of the person within these massive stone guardians.
Well, it speaks volumes about the skill and the artistry of the Rapa Nui people. Imagine the precision, the patience required to carve those nuanced details into such hard material, especially with the tools they had available.
It's mind-boggling. And speaking of impressive details, we can't forget about those massive top knots, the pukao, sitting on top of some of the Moai heads. What's the story behind those?
The pukao are definitely more than just, fashion statements.
Right.
They represent top knots, hairstyles worn by the Rapa Nui people, especially those of high status.
So they were like status symbols, the ancient Rapa Nui equivalent of a crown or, fancy headdress.
Exactly. The pukao signified power, prestige, and spiritual authority. Remember that concept of mana we discussed earlier?
The spiritual power that kind of flowed through everything?
Yes. Well, the Rapa Nui believed that mana was concentrated in the hair, so those elaborate top knots were seen as a way to amplify one's spiritual power.
So the bigger the top knot, the more mana you had.
You could say that. But here's the interesting part. The pukao were made from a different type of rock than the Moai themselves. They were crafted from red scoria, a lightweight volcanic rock found at a different quarry called Punapau.
So they weren't carving the pukao from the same volcanic tuff as the Moai bodies. That seems like extra work. Why not just use the same material?
It probably comes down to a combination of factors: aesthetics, practicality, and maybe even a bit of symbolism. Red scoria, it's visually striking against the gray tuff of the Moai. It also happens to be lighter than tuff, which would have made transporting and lifting the pukao a bit easier.
That makes sense, but I'm still trying to picture how they got those massive red cylinders up onto the Moai heads. Did they have like some ancient crane system? Or maybe they used those rope walking skills to hoist them up there.
The exact method is still a bit of a mystery, but archaeologists have a few theories based on the evidence and oral histories. One idea is that they built ramps of earth and stone, allowing them to roll the pukao up to the top of the Moai's head.
Oh, like those giant ramps they used to build the pyramids. Simple but effective solution, especially when you have a lot of manpower.
Exactly. But it would have required incredible coordination and strength to move those heavy pukao. And remember that legend of the woman with powerful mana who could topple the Moai with her thoughts?
Yeah, how could I forget her? What does she have to do with the pukao?
Well, some oral histories suggest that she might have had a hand, or rather her mana, in placing the pukao. The stories say she used her spiritual power to lift the pukao and gently place them atop the Moai heads.
Wow, that's a lot more impressive than a ramp. Talk about a power statement. So whether it was ramps, ropes, or a touch of mana, the placement of the pukao was clearly a feat of ingenuity and a testament to the reverence they held for these statues.
Absolutely. And that reverence extended to every aspect of the Moai creation process. From the selection of the stone to the carving of the features to the final placement of the pukao, it was a holistic endeavor, a fusion of artistry, engineering, and spiritual belief.
It's amazing how these statues, silent for centuries, can tell us so much about the beliefs and practices of the Rapa Nui people. It makes you realize that even cultures separated by, vast oceans and centuries of time, they share a common desire to honor their ancestors, to connect with the spiritual world, and to leave a lasting mark on the world.
Speaking of leaving a mark, there's another fascinating aspect of Rapa Nui culture that often gets overshadowed by the grandeur of the Moai: the ubiquitous mata.
Mata. Is that some kind of ancient Rapa Nui delicacy, like maybe fossilized volcanic fruit?
Not quite as tasty, I'm afraid. Mata refers to obsidian tools, crafted from volcanic glass. These tools were everywhere on Easter Island, used for a wide range of tasks, from everyday chores to more specialized crafts.
So the ancient Rapa Nui equivalent of like a Swiss Army knife. But if these tools were so common, why don't we hear as much about them as the Moai?
It's partly because they lacked the visual impact of those giant statues, but the mata were essential to the Rapa Nui way of life.
So what exactly were they used for? Were they all weapons, like spear points for those epic battles between the clans?
That's a common misconception. While some were indeed shaped into spear points, most were used for daily tasks, like cutting fibers, for clothing and housing, carving intricate designs, even preparing food.
Wow. So they really were multi-purpose tools, from building shelters to creating art to prepping dinner. The mata were clearly indispensable.
Precisely. The mata are a testament to the Rapa Nui people's ingenuity and adaptability. They took a readily available material, volcanic glass, and transformed it into a diverse set of tools essential for their survival and cultural expression. It reminds us that even seemingly simple objects can hold incredible significance and provide valuable insights into the lives of the people who created them.
It's a good reminder to look beyond the obvious, to appreciate those subtle stories that everyday objects can tell.
Absolutely. Sometimes those seemingly mundane artifacts can reveal just as much about a civilization as its grandest monuments. The mata, like the Moai, offer a tangible link to the past, a connection to the ingenuity and resilience of the Rapa Nui people.
And just like that, we've stumbled upon another layer of the Easter Island story, a layer that reveals the resourcefulness and adaptability of its people.
Exactly. The mata, with their understated practicality, provide a fascinating counterpoint to the monumental presence of the Moai. They show us the full spectrum of Rapa Nui life, from the grand to the everyday, and everything in between.
It's incredible to think that such a small island could hold so many stories, so many layers of history and human experience, and we're still uncovering new pieces of the puzzle all the time.
It's true. The more we learn about the Rapa Nui people, the more we realize how much there is still to discover. And speaking of discoveries, there's one fascinating detail about the Moai that we haven't discussed yet. A detail that reveals a deeper layer of their spiritual significance.
Oh, I'm all ears. What detail is that?
It's all about their eyes.
Their eyes. I mean, they're definitely striking. Those deep-set sockets staring out at the world. But what's so special about them?
The eyes were considered the window to the soul, the point where the spiritual essence of the ancestor could connect with the living world. But here's the fascinating part. The eyes were not carved until the very last stage of the Moai's creation.
Wait, so they transported these giant statues across the island, erected them on platforms, sometimes even added those massive pukao, all without eyes. Why would they do that?
It was a deliberate act, a way of keeping the Moai in a dormant state until they reached their final destination. The carving of the eyes was the final sacred act that awakened the Moai, imbuing it with the spiritual essence of the ancestor it represented.
Wow. That changes my whole perspective on the Moai. It wasn't just about creating like a physical representation of the ancestor. It was about capturing their spirit, their essence within the stone. And those eyes were the key to unlocking that connection.
Exactly. And the materials used for the eyes were carefully chosen. They often used coral for the white of the eye, and obsidian, that volcanic glass we discussed earlier, for the pupil.
Coral and obsidian, those materials must have held like a symbolic meaning for the Rapa Nui people.
You're right. Coral, being from the sea, symbolized life, abundance, and a connection to the natural world. Obsidian, on the other hand, represented power, strength, and the ability to see into the spiritual realm.
So it's like they were combining like the essence of life with the power of the spirit world, all focused through those piercing eyes. I can just imagine those statues gazing out at the island, their eyes reflecting the fusion of the physical and the spiritual.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And it reminds us that the Moai were much more than just, impressive sculptures. They were active participants in the spiritual life of the Rapa Nui people. Conduits between the living and the dead, guardians of the lineage, and embodiments of the island's rich history and cultural heritage.
We've talked about the incredible effort that went into carving and transporting the Moai, but hearing about the symbolism behind the eyes, the careful selection of materials, the deliberate act of awakening the statue, it adds a whole new dimension to their story.
It shows us that the creation of the Moai was a deeply spiritual endeavor, imbued with meaning and purpose. They weren't just monuments to the past, they were active participants in the present, shaping the lives and beliefs of the people who created them.
It makes me realize that we should never underestimate the power of belief, the way ancient cultures infused their world with meaning and purpose. It's a legacy that continues to resonate today, even as we strive to understand the practicalities of how they created and transported these massive figures.
Absolutely. The Moai stand as a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, the drive to create, to connect, and to leave a lasting mark on the world. But as with any journey of discovery, we've reached a point where we need to pause and allow you, our listeners, to absorb all this information.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the practical techniques of Moai construction to the spiritual significance of their features and the enduring mysteries that surround them.
We've explored the quarrying and carving process, debated the theories behind their transportation, delved into the symbolism of the pukao and the mata, and even peered into the spiritual significance of their eyes. But as with any good exploration, it's also sparked new questions, new avenues for future discovery.
Welcome back to our final deep dive into the mysteries of Easter Island's Moai. We've explored the quarries, debated transportation theories, and even delved into the symbolism of their eyes. But I have a feeling the Moai have even more secrets to reveal, right?
It's true. There's one aspect we haven't touched on yet that sheds light on, a significant shift in Rapa Nui culture. It seems there was a time when the Moai, they were no longer seen as these sacred objects, but rather as a readily available resource.
Wait, they started like recycling the Moai, like turning these ancient statues into building blocks? That's kind of unexpected.
It does seem jarring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine these figures, once revered as, the embodiment of ancestors, repurposed into walls, foundations, even breakwaters.
So what happened? Did they just like run out of other building materials? Or was there a deeper change in their beliefs about the Moai?
It's likely a combination of factors: environmental pressures, resource scarcity, and perhaps even, evolving religious beliefs could have played a role. It's a reminder that cultures are not static. They adapt, they change in response to the challenges they face.
That's a really important point. It challenges the way we often think about ancient cultures, as like frozen in time. This suggests a more dynamic and complex story. But it makes you wonder, if the Moai were so central to their culture, how could their reverence for them just diminish so drastically?
It's a question that continues to intrigue researchers. Some theorize that as the island's resources dwindled and competition for land and food intensified, the focus shifted from, honoring the past to simply surviving in the present.
That's a sobering thought. It suggests that even the most deeply held beliefs can be tested, when survival is at stake. It makes you reflect on how our own values and priorities might shift in the face of, extreme challenges.
Exactly. The story of the Moai is not just a tale of ancient ingenuity and artistry, but also a reflection of human resilience and adaptation. It highlights the complex relationship between culture, belief, and, of course, the environment.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't, a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, unexpected changes, and even contradictions. But those contradictions often reveal the most interesting insights into, the human experience.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Moai, I think it's worth stepping back and considering what we've learned. We've explored the practicalities of their creation, debated the engineering feats involved in their transportation, and delved into the spiritual beliefs that imbued them with meaning.
Yeah, we've uncovered layers of history, uncovered clues to their cultural significance, and of course, encountered enduring mysteries that continue to spark debate and inspire awe. But perhaps the most important takeaway is the realization that the Moai are much more than just, giant stone figures. They're a reflection of human ingenuity, creativity, resilience, and the enduring power of belief.
Beautifully put. And as we've seen, their story is still unfolding. New discoveries are being made all the time, challenging our assumptions and deepening our understanding of this, fascinating culture.
It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to appreciate about the, rich tapestry of human history and culture. So as we conclude our deep dive, we encourage you to keep that spirit of curiosity alive. What other mysteries of the ancient world capture your imagination? What stories are waiting to be uncovered?
We hope this deep dive has sparked a desire to learn more, to delve deeper into the fascinating world of archaeology, history, and the enduring legacy of ancient cultures.
And we invite you to join us again next time as we embark on another journey of discovery, another deep dive into the fascinating and often unexpected corners of our shared human experience.
Until then, keep exploring.